And boom, like that, we are live on the internet. How's it going?
Okay, hi.
We made it.
Yay.
So we've previously had on probably the coolest name of any person I've had on the podcast before, Melon Dash. And she was amazing. I really enjoyed talking to her. And if I'm right, do you work with her? What is your relationship with Melon?
Well, my relationship with Melon, we do work together. I have had a swim school for 20 years. This is our 20th anniversary this year. And I met Melon back at a U.S. Swim School conference, and she was giving a talk there. And I had some adult students, and I could get them to swim across the pool, and I'd say, how was it? And they would say, I have no idea. And I thought, well, that's weird. They're doing everything I'm telling them to do. And I went to this conference, and she was giving a talk on adult swimming. And I thought, oh my gosh, she knows what's wrong with what's happening with these adults. And so I met her afterwards, and I got trained in her method. And then we've been working together since then, because I've been teaching the miracle swimming method, but then also I've come back to learn to train teachers. And so we've worked together quite a bit on that kind of project. And, I've done some teaching for her swim school, and she's come out to my swim school. And so we've had a nice professional relationship like that.
That's awesome. So, in the bio you have, it says you started at 14 years old.
Well, I started teaching swimming at 14. Yes.
Yeah.
I was one of those, pool rat kids who just always wanted to be at the pool. And so, I saw a little description in the community center page that said they took volunteers. So I started volunteering, ride my bike down to the pool, and spent all summer volunteering when I was probably 12 and 13. Well, maybe 13 and 14. I think you could get your first lifeguarding certificate at 15. So I think I started getting paid at 15. So yeah, it's been what I've been doing for a very long time.
So if you started at 14, so roughly 8 years.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
So was this always the plan? Did you know then that this is what you were going to do for your career? Did you take a sidetrack somewhere else, or?
Yeah, no, I didn't know it was going to be my career. Of course, it was the job that I worked every summer when I was through high school and college, because, once you have a job at a summer pool, they want you to come back. It's easy for everybody. Right. So I did that. And then after college, I moved to Seattle for a volunteer position. It was kind of like a domestic Peace Corps, so I was a full-time volunteer for a year. And so once I finished that, I needed a job, I needed money. And so going back to pool work was the easiest, fastest thing while I kind of figured out what was next. And there was the pool that I got a job at, they had a warm water therapy pool. And so I got a job. They had a warm water therapy pool plus a regular lap pool. And that was really my first exposure to water therapy of that type. And I figured I would probably go back to school and get my occupational therapy and do water therapy. That seemed like a really good avenue. But in the interim, I met my husband, and we decided to try out opening our own swim school. And then the rest is history.
Did you always have entrepreneurial tendencies, or was that something different?
That's an interesting question that I've never thought about before, because I guess I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur. it just seemed like the logical thing to do. You know, it was following something that was fun and I was good at, and it really probably was later that I realized, oh yeah, this is being an entrepreneur. But when I think about as a kid, I definitely was always the self-starter. I mean, even that going to do the volunteer job, I know a lot of parents would like tell their kids, you need to go out and do something, or, and my parents never had to tell me that. I have always been a self-starter in that kind of way, I think. So that might be an entrepreneur spirit.
Yeah, I've always thought that it's kind of built in. When I was a kid, at 12, 13, I started me and a friend of mine were into magic. So he was doing magic, and I decided that clearly what you do next is you print out flyers and you go door to door and you knock on all your neighbors' doors and get them to hire you to do magic shows, I was always starting clubs, and then I started a web design company at 16. So yeah, I think that for people like us, it's kind of built in, it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that true of your husband also? Was he like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, this is so interesting. I mean, he still works in the business, but it's not his primary work anymore. He's been a firefighter for a number of years now. Nice. And we really looked at that profession because, I mean, it's something he'd been interested in. It's still in the life-saving area in terms of work. But it fit for our family, so he could still be a part of the business, and he could really be a full-time dad still, right, because of the way the shift work is. So is he an entrepreneur? I mean, he's definitely also a self-starter and a projector and things like that, and doesn't necessarily like to follow all the rules in the box, but I know he follows the rules in the box when it comes to his job now in terms of the safety
for sure
stuff. But but he is always looking for new ways and different things, and being creative with what he does, certainly.
I feel like firefighters kind of it's kind of the perfect job for someone who's also looking to have a business either with a partner or on the side. You see that a lot because of the shift work, and it also lends an air of credibility if you're doing something in the safety field. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And it just, gosh, I mean, this is a random thought. I just keep thinking about, I don't know why I keep thinking about this guy, but, we take our job with us wherever we go when we're, as you talk about, on vacation. I mean, I've seen that man make rescues many times, because we take vacations around the water, and I have my ears perked up to danger around the water, but he does certainly as well. And just making rescues. We've made a rescue just last summer, made a rescue of a guy at a lake up in Canada that, he would not have lived had we not been there. I don't think there was anybody else there who knew what to do.
What happened?
It was at a national park in Canada, and hot day, and at a beach. And there was a family that came. I mean, there were several families, but this family, and they were lots of boys, lots of men, young men, doing that kind of jocular, teasy sort of thing, of I'm going to throw you in. And I looked at them and I said to my husband, I said, well, which one then? Because this family can't swim.
Right.
I mean, we could see it. But of course we're attracted to the water, and it feels good, and it's, cooling place, and beautiful, and all those things, all those reasons we go to the water. But especially because I've worked with adults so much, I can see it when people are afraid and don't understand how it works. But one guy was going to be brave and make it from here to there. And, he was by the fact that he thought he could get to a certain destination, and which is never a good idea, because destinations are never, the distance that you think they are, or it relies on the idea that safety is somewhere outside of yourself.
Right.
And sure enough, my husband happened to be out on the dock. I was up on the shore with the kids, and I looked over. I'm like, why is Bruce getting in? Oh, because he's swimming out to rescue this guy. Yeah. And other people recognized it was a problem, but he was a big guy, and knowing how to rescue somebody and not becoming a victim yourself, there's very few people who know how to do that. That's a very specific skill.
So in this case, the victim and probably his friends realized he was in trouble?
Yes. Well, the victim knew he was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
His friends, he was also, as it turned out, there were some boats on a dock, so he was behind those boats. So his family from shore couldn't even necessarily see him. It was just the people who were out on the dock who could see him. And I think a lot of people thought because he'd been kind of goofing around, they thought he was being a little dramatic, or something like that. And which is why I think us having the ability to know the difference between being dramatic and needing help, if by the time somebody else might have really recognized this guy's going under, it might have been, too late. So yeah, it was pretty, I was thankful we were there.
There is a great story in this article written by Mario Vitone where he describes a family went out on a boat charter for the day, and they were swimming in the ocean, and the boat captain all of a sudden jumped off the boat and swam towards the family, and he pushed the parents out of the way, who looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" They were offended that he was pushing past them. And then he reached over and grabbed their kid and yanked him out of the water, who was drowning right next to them. And what he saw, what they didn't see, was that he was drowning. And, he realized it because he was, familiar with it. He knew what drowning really looked like. Obviously he lived on the water. And the parents, who were right next to the kid, didn't have the same ability to spot that drowning. And, it's true that most of the time, just like the guys in that story, it's hard to figure out what drowning looks like. And it doesn't look like what you see on Baywatch. It doesn't see what you see on TV with people yelling and screaming. It's very different. It's usually that vertical, doggy paddle kind of deal, or arms out to the side. So, it's interesting how people take for granted that they might not realize what it actually looks like when someone's in trouble.
Yeah. It could make it a little bit of, like, I used to do triathlons, but and not like big time, high competitive, but just for fun. And I find them uncomfortable to do because of the number of people who don't, they know how to do the strokes. They can do a front crawl, but they are not comfortable. And I can see it, and I can feel those early signs that they are getting their safety on being able to get to shore, and not because they understand how the water holds them, not because they understand how to be calm with themselves. And it shows up in the water. And so I end up spending most of my time looking around, checking on people. So it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Yeah.
Raises up your blood pressure. So talk about the idea of safety being within yourself as opposed to something outside yourself? Because you've touched on that twice, and I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Well, we really understand safety. The biggest danger in the water is panic if you lose it. And this is why you see when somebody drowns, people will say they were a good, and you think, well, if they were a good swimmer, why did this happen? I mean, there's certainly things like being injured on the way in, maybe, or drugs, or carbon monoxide poisoning, things like that. But if you think about sort of any situation and they say, if something surprising happens or something unexpected happens, the first thing you want to do is don't panic, right? And because when you panic, you lose control. This then puts people at risk for doing things like saying, well, my safety is if I can get to a certain destination. But if that destination is far, then, sorry, I'm getting a charging cord for this computer. It's about to die. And I'm losing my train of thought here.
Oh, sorry, get your cord and we'll figure it out.
I'm getting a cord here.
You're fine.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Let's see, where was I?
You were talking about people putting safety into a destination.
If you lose it,
yeah.
Right. So that if you're saying a destination, you aren't present to what's happening right now, and then you can't be in right now, and you have to be in charge of what's happening right now for things like, well, I would like to get some air, or, well, I wish I was at the shore and pulled out. Water still holds me up here. It's not like the properties of the changed just because I'm now further away from shore, let's say.
Right.
So, if we have to stay calm in those situations, so you can realize, all right, well, I still float exactly the same. I still can get air in the same way. And then I can make that are effective. Lose it or focused over there on that. I need to take care of myself right now. We mean by getting your safety from yourself instead of by getting over to that place.
Right. That makes perfect sense. But of course, not panicking is easier said than done, right? Nobody wants to panic. It's a tough thing to do in those situations.
Yeah, so, and that's where we teach that first, and we say that's really your most important skill. That's your foundational skill, is how does that work, and then you can build your other physical skills from there.
So, I mean, that's a good life skill in general. So, how do you encourage people not to panic? How do you teach that?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, we recognize that it's a thing, right? And we talk about it. When people don't talk about it and don't recognize it, things that you don't talk about or recognize, you can't be in charge of. So we really bring this up at the forefront. Okay, and it explains in terms of adults, it explains their experiences, and so that helps them have a new understanding. And then we teach them about how to recognize within themselves, okay, this is what it feels like to be calm. All right, I know that feeling. And then to be able to recognize, this is what it feels like when I start to leave calm, right? There's stages usually. And so, okay, I'm starting to leave calm, and I want to make it my priority to come before I've gone too far down the line.
Right.
And it's really about mindfulness or paying attention. And so it's about bringing your attention back to yourself and back to the present. Our mind, our brain will tell us to worry about the future or to think about what happened in the past, but we really have to be in the right now. So there's lots of different practices that do that. You know, yoga will do that. And there's other mindful trainings, meditation, they'll do that. So it's very similar to those sorts of things, but we put it into the practice of being in the water and make that as your foundational thing. Okay. Because when people, certainly adults who've had a negative experience, when they get in the water, they already start to leave calm. And so they're already on that road to danger. And we want them to be able to recognize that. And okay, my job is really to come back to calm. And I got to practice that by feeling my body, feeling my physical body right now, feeling what feels safe and what feels good, and really being in that practice the whole time that you're in the water.
So what was so revolutionary about Melon Dash's system for you?
It was really this piece that it's the piece of focusing on where people are on the spectrum versus focusing on how to move their arms and legs.
And she uses the circles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. She uses she calls it the 5 circles method.
I love that.
So that's, yeah. And that's the illustration that she has come up with to illustrate this spectrum and this way of being. And it's an illustration based on things that we use in our daily language, you know, that we go from being calm, which is centered and present at home, to we've lost it. The 5th circle, we're out of ourselves. We're gone. So we have language that we use all the time that describes this illustration that she has of the 5 circles.
So for anybody who hasn't seen that episode, can you explain that idea of the 5 circles?
Yeah. So the first circle is it's a little stick figure. I was just looking around if I had a piece of paper. It's a little stick figure, and it's literally drawing a circle around that stick figure that goes all the way to their feet and around their head, encompasses your whole body. And this is where we are most of the time in life, where we say your physical self, which is the stick figure, and your non-physical self, which is the circle, are together.
Right.
And we call it being grounded or at home. And then the second circle, or the second illustration, again, we have the little stick figure, but the circle is moving up a little bit. And we say things like we have cold feet, or we're weak in the knees. You know, the feet are sticking out of the circle. And then the third circle, the illustration, the circle's moving up even higher. So it's up to about your chest area, where we say things like we have butterflies in our stomach, or cold and clammy hands, things like this. This is really a place where we are not functioning as well anymore, right? If you think about doing anything, when you get to that stage where you've got butterflies in your stomach, you can still think about things and you're still interacting, but your quality of what you're doing has significantly diminished. And we don't, when we're learning the swimming, we don't ever want to get to that place, because how then does it make any sense to be saying, kick your feet or move your arms, if you're not in control of it anymore? And then the fourth circle, we say it's up to your chin. And so that one, you say you're paralyzed with fear, that you're just not even attached to the rest of your body. And I always say for that one, when I was a kid, I'd have a bad dream and I'd want to run to my parents' bed, but I just couldn't because I was paralyzed with fear.
Right.
And then the fifth circle, it's outside of you. That's total panic, where we say we've lost it, we're beside ourselves. people don't have memory in that kind of situation because it seemed safer to leave the body than it did to stay for whatever was going on, whatever bad thing was happening.
Where they're literally out of their mind.
Yeah, they're out of their mind. Yep. And it's a way, excuse me, it's a normal human thing that we do this. You could think of it as fight or flight too, that it's a way that we leave as a way to protect ourselves from something really bad happening. But unfortunately, it leaves us at risk. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say it makes perfect sense, and I think everybody has kind of experienced that. So it's a really neat way of thinking about, the escalating, levels of nervousness and anxiety in a way where you can identify it, you can kind of put a finger on it, assign yourself the level where you're at, and knowing something is happening is certainly the first step in regaining control over it.
Yeah. And that when we look at learning to swim in the water, it's so pivotal. I mean, I think about, I have a student recently that I'm going to interview her later today to get her story. But when one of our teachers, they were friends, and she convinced her to come take our class. And she said, yeah, when I came to the first day of class, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go to class so I can learn how to drown calmly. That was her little statement. And of course, she didn't learn how to drown. She learned how to swim, but she also learned how to be calm. And she's done such a great job. She's actually going on vacation later this month to the Philippines. And one of the things they're going to do is they're going to swim. There's some islands. The only way you can get to them is to swim to them.
Wow.
And she showed me pictures of them, and they're amazing and beautiful. And it's really neat to see that she's going to be able to do this. But her wife, who has always been a good swimmer, she said, because this particular woman, she's also going to do a swim across Lake Washington with me in this summer.
Wow.
And she's nervous for her. She said, I don't know if it's a good idea for you to be in the middle of the lake. And she says, what are you going to do if you get a cramp? Or what are you going to do if you get tired? Or, and she said, well, what do you mean? It's going to be fine, because I've had a cramp before. And because I know how to be calm, I was able to figure out what to do. And I just calmly, stretched it out and, stopped swimming across. In this case, it was across the pool, but I just stopped swimming and I stretched and I waited and I breathed and it was fine. And I said, I think what's going on here is that you now understand how to get your safety from yourself. And your wife, who has always been identified as the good swimmer, she was getting her safety from destinations.
Right.
And she doesn't understand how panic works in the water. And now it's showing up that she doesn't really understand how somebody could be safe swimming across Lake Washington because it's so far. And so it's interesting how their roles have reversed.
Right, because it's the same water, whether you're in a pool or in the middle of the lake. It's the same idea.
Right. Yes.
Now
I will put the caveat. Oh, I was going to say, I will put the caveat out there that you have to listen to yourself before you get into that lake to make sure that it's a safe time of year in terms of temperature. There's some of those things that, are also play a factor that you have. But it's just like, right now it's snowing in Seattle, and you have to decide when you open up your door, is it a good idea to go outside in a swimsuit and be out there,
Right, yeah.
Something inside you would say, no, that's not smart.
Yeah. It reminds me of the phenomenon where if you had a few inch wide piece of wood, you could walk across it on the floor, no problem. But if you elevated that, 100 feet in the air, it's the same width, the same piece of wood. Theoretically, it should be identical, but because you're nervous, now it's a much bigger feat. Right now, it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot scarier. But even though it's the exact same task,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And you would use the same skill that we teach, that you would, if you really wanted to walk across that beam, you couldn't be paying attention to how high up it is. You'd have to bring all your focus into you and bring your presence and your calmness in and your surety in your feet. Yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. So, usually what we talk about is water safety when it comes to children, but you and Melon, and I've come to agree with this as well, have a thought that the first step to water safety and pool safety for children is actually to teach adults how to swim.
Yeah.
And so why do adults need to learn how to swim before kids?
Well, what we have found over and over again, there's several reasons, but one of them is what we found over and over again is that a big reason why adults don't know how to swim is because their parents don't know how to swim. We pass on to the next generation what are fears and concerns, and people would say one way to, if there's something you're completely terrified and you want to protect your children of it, you keep them away. So there's a certain segment of people who will not take their kids to swimming lessons, let's say. But there's also people who certainly do take their kids to swimming lessons, but they take their kids to swimming lessons and they're sitting on the side of the pool saying, okay, but be careful, don't drown while you're in there, and the kid's like, oh, I thought everything was fine. Why are you freaking out over there? Or, pretending to not be freaking out. So these things get passed on to the children. And also, kids do learn to swim in swimming lessons, but when you really talk to people really learn to swim because it's the culture of their family, in terms of that's what their family does for summer vacations. Or, I certainly know I never finished a swimming lesson as a kid myself. And I learned to swim because my parents had a friend that had a backyard pool. And when we'd go over there, I'd spend 6 hours in the pool and playing around and figuring it out. And, or I'd have my mom drop me off at the public pool. And I played around in the water. And it's a part of our family culture. And that is a huge influencer in the deep understanding of how your body and the water work together and your relationship with the water. So it really starts with the parents. And kids can learn to swim. And there are great programs out there that really do learn how to water. But at the end of the day, it is parents' responsibility to keep their children safe in and around the water. And if parents can't swim, they can't do that. They have to rely solely on what you do, things, mechanical blocks to keep them away.
Sure. So what are some of the, obviously, like you said, it's important for parents to know how to swim. What are some of the biggest influences that keep them from learning how to swim, from knowing how to swim?
Yeah. Well, because they've had scary things happen in the past. That can be one thing. There's an inherent, you get into a certain way of being in terms of our family doesn't swim. We're just not swimmer families, right? Or something like that. It's just sort of a way. You also know, as an adult, even if you haven't had a scary incident, you know that people die in the water. And so it's smart and logical for an adult with an adult brain to say, this is something I need to be cautious of. And we have lots of things that we do in life. And do I really want to tackle something that I might die doing? Nah. Maybe I'll take piano lessons instead. Right? I mean, it can be easier to avoid uncomfortable situations or things that don't feel good. There's other things that we'd rather do sometimes. And I really feel students do end up coming because the discomfort of not knowing, of feeling like they're missing out, of feeling like this is something that everybody else does, and I want to be part of that. I feel like that's kind of the initiator of people saying, all right, it's time. I want to be in the know too. And I'm not really being fully safe by just staying away.
Is it that kind of peer pressure? Is it a vacation? What is the tipping point where someone finally picks up the phone and calls you or shows up at one of your lessons?
Yeah. I think it's usually a culmination of things that people usually have had some things over time. They have tried to learn before and it hasn't been successful. But they just know there's got to be a way for me to do this. And yes, I think upcoming vacations, we love taking vacations to warm tropical places. So either an upcoming vacation or maybe a vacation that was about a year ago that they're still stewing on of, oh, I really missed out. Right. And so they're going to take care of it. Yeah. Or sometimes it's, just change of life. I newly retired. My kids are now older. I have a little more time for myself. I want to do something for myself.
Is anxiety and panic the biggest danger in the water, or is it something else?
I definitely believe that it's anxiety and panic is the biggest danger. That's where it all stems from. Because it really gets in the way of anything else. I think in Australia, actually, they're doing their campaign around riptides. It's something like, don't panic, go with the flow. And I want to say, don't quote I'm live on Facebook here or whatever, but it's recognizes that it's less a problem about where you are in the water than and it's more a problem about the panicking about where you are in the water. When you are calm, we do this all the time. When we're calm, we make up new steps. We make up new things come to us. And so we can figure out a lot of things that we didn't know we could figure out when we're calm. When we're in panic, we're just reactionary, or we're reacting, but we're not receiving what the effects are to those reactions. So we can't really do something effectively with that. So
no, that makes perfect sense. So what do you guys have new coming out in 2019?
Well, something very exciting that we have launched is we are now teaching online.
That's awesome.
It's really, I have to staying in my, what we call first circle, staying calm about it, because it involves an area that I am not great of in terms of technology, but it's really exciting because this piece of understanding how calm works and understanding mindfulness in the water, presence in the water, these all happen through a series of conversations and through a series of self-exploration. And so we're able to take these conversations and online and then guide people on to have that exploration into their own local pool. So they don't have to come to us in Seattle or fly to Melon in Florida or Palm Springs. She teaches in a bunch of different places, but so it's out there. So I have somebody in Vancouver, BC, who's doing it right now, and it's great.
That's really cool. So if somebody wants to sign up for that, how do they sign up for that?
Well, it's on our website, orcaswimschool.com, and it's one of our menu items, right? Introduction, beginning, and online. So there's a link right in the website there, and we have two classes up there right now. We just have an introductory class, and we've got the first piece of the beginning class up there. So we'll be doing more as we develop them. So throughout the year.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to find you, your website, obviously, orcaswimschool.com. Are you on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that?
Yep. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter now even, I think.
So all the name, Orca Swim School?
Orca Swim School, yeah.
Perfect. Well, Cori, thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Is there anything you want to mention or let people know before we wrap it up here?
Well, I think we hit on a lot of the points that I find important. So I appreciate that. So I think that's probably it. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So
well, it was great, and I learned quite a bit, so I really appreciate it. So thanks again, and thank you. Thanks. All right. So thanks everybody. We'll see you guys next time, and have a good one. Bye.
Okay. Bye.